Alright, hi girls. Another thing that is extremely important for this unit is going to be the actual structure and function of each of the parts of a nerve cell or a neuron. So I'm going to go ahead and put a picture of the nerve cell on the screen and talk about each of the different parts. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and talk about the structure and function of the specific parts of our nerve cell. This is a really important thing to understand for both this class and your AP test. So I'd highly recommend making note of each of the different functions of the parts that I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and start on the left-hand side here and move my way over. So right here in the center is our cell body. This is where we're going to have our more traditional organelles and structures that you would see in just your generic animal cell. That's going to have your nucleus here in the center, as noted, and your other basic organelles here. Now, coming out of that are these like irregular branch-looking things. Now, these are called dendrites. Dendrites are just an extension of the cytoplasm. Now, what we know about the cytoplasm is that that's where a lot of chemical reactions occur, and that's going to be pretty much the same function in a nerve cell, but now we have a lot more area to do that. So these dendrites basically increase the area and are where the cell as a whole is going to receive chemical signals from other neurons, and then in the dendrite it will initiate a new electrical signal to send down to the opposite end of the cell. It's important to note that those signals are always going to start on the side of the cell body and then move down the axon to the other side. It's never going to start on the axon terminal and come towards the dendrites. The dendrites receive that information, create the new signal, and then pass it along. In the brain, so this would be your cell all over the body, but in our brain we actually have something called Purkinje cells, and those dendrites and Purkinje cells have the capability to make connections with over 1,000 different neurons. So if you can imagine 1,000 different connections here working together to pass along signals in the brain. Now the next thing we have here, let's move on to our axon. So this is our main elongated portion of the cell, and this is where our electrical signal is going to be passing through. Now, these things covering it, called the myelin, it's like insulation. So if you can picture a wire, well, all of our wires have that plastic coating around the outside. That's exactly like what the myelin does here. Now, what makes that myelin are these cells here called Schwann cells, and you can see them covering this entire axon. So it requires a lot of these Schwann cells to be able to cover the axon. Now, note that these are totally different cells. They are not part of the nerve cell. They just surround the axon. So these create that myelin that coats it. The areas that don't have the myelin or the Schwann cells coating it yet are called the nodes of Ranvier, and that's this little section in here. So we have nodes of Ranvier, the Schwann cell, and then those Schwann cells are creating this myelin. Now, the really cool thing is that, so this would be in our peripheral nervous system, a structure like this. In our central nervous system, we have something called oligodendrocytes, and those, instead of being like Schwann cells where they surround it and then create the myelin sheath, the oligodendrocytes actually have the capability to wrap around several different axons at once, and they're really, really cool looking. So I will show you a picture of that once I'm done explaining this. And then finally we have, let's see here, our axon terminals. also known as the synaptic knobs, and that's where we're going to release the neurotransmitters, which are just the chemicals that communicate with the other surrounding nerve cells. So that's that entire process of the message being passed along, is to receive that in the dendrite, run through the axon, and then passing it along again through the axon terminal. And I think that is it for this structure. And as promised, here is a picture of your oligodendrocyte. And you can see it on the right-hand side there, it's the pink cell. The dark, kind of maroon color center is the nucleus, surrounded by the cell body. And I just think that is so amazing that it can do the job of several Schwann cells. This is only a picture of what would be occurring in our central nervous system. These things are not found in our peripheral nervous system. Other important cells that kind of support our nerve cells, besides oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells, as already mentioned, are seen on the left-hand side there, and those are astrocytes. And astrocytes are only found also in the central nervous system. So we have a lot of specialty cells found there. And those types of cells are actually going to stick to several different neurons, and they can actually break down and remove some neurotransmitter chemicals that are released, and also get rid of any debris and unwanted material in the nervous system. So those are the most important parts of your central and peripheral nervous system. These cells are what make it all happen.